like to just give a little bit of commentary on my dad's recent devotional on the Father Heart of God. He said something really interesting. He referred to the Psalms where it speaks of the Lord seeing us as the apple of his eye and the Lord's compassion for us. And it really impacted me because one of the points that my dad spoke on was the fact that if we apply the quality, the attribute of God's infiniteness to his compassion or his sensitivity to us, then it gives us a perspective that is so much different than our own perspective on our own pain, or even on positive things, even on our victories and our joy. In other words, God actually knows us, the intimate parts of our personality, the intimate emotions, fears, the experiences. When we suffered rejection when we were little kids. And it's so interesting because I'm not a psychologist, but it seems like the general consensus of psychology and counseling is that in our infancy, in our childhood, we are experiencing things that will form us for the rest of our lives. It's interesting that the time that we spend with our parents is relatively short. I'm starting to realize this myself as a father of a 17-year-old, that my wife starts to tell me, yeah, we don't know how much longer she'll be here. And I'll think, oh no, of course she'll be here forever. And I'm like, will she? Yeah, she'll be 18 in a few months, and then what, And so it's a relatively short amount of time that we spend with our parents, but the experiences that we have with our parents that reflect on the way we see God, the way we relate to God, they're so formative. They have such a heavy weight. And but specifically just reflecting on this issue that God's compassion, the way he feels about his sensitivity towards those formative things in our lives, the victories, in other words, for those times when we were able to overcome a barrier and overcome a fear, do something that was difficult to us. I think about myself learning to do public speaking and being in YWAM schools and doing preaching classes and seeing videos of myself with my black hat on, baseball cap, and kind of like looking at my shoes. You can even see my face, and leaning on the pedestal with one foot, everyone kind of fearing that at any moment the pedestal will break and I'll fall over. Or not to say that I've become such a great public speaker, but thinking about those early challenges, the first time that you spoke, who knows if it was really your parents who saw that. It's very likely that it was actually God who heard your first word. And so breakthrough moments to the Lord, those things are so meaningful. He's so sensitized toward those things. He joys over those things. And also those times in our childhood when we suffered rejection, when we were alone. The Lord has a comprehension of those things. And I guess really what I wanted to say within that too is that I believe that God really wants to bring new levels of healing in a lot of our lives. And the first thing that we need to do is to be open to it. Some of those areas that we've just kind of become seared in our hearts, kind of like what Paul talks about, where we're desensitized. The Lord needs to resensitize us in order for him to bring the healing that he wants to bring. And that's just something I've really thought about this week. What are the areas where I have just kind of squashed down and am not aware of, but areas that God wants to touch and bring softness? One area that I do feel the Lord speaking to me is my attitude towards people. You know, in ministry, sometimes you spend years and years giving yourself and living a life of availability towards people, especially as a pastor, and yet as the years go by, you really discover where your heart really was. Why were you doing that? Were you doing that so that you could build your ministry, so that you could have followers, so that you could have some kind of respect or recognition? And if you are doing it for those reasons, it can be a very bitter pill to swallow when you realize that if you say, "Use me, Lord," you're going to be used. You're there to give sacrificially, not to receive back what you necessarily imagine that you will need to receive, or you should receive. And it's an interesting thing too, because sometimes, because I'm the son and the grandson of missionaries and people who are used of God in amazing ways, sometimes people will ask me, like, well, how is it to be the son of so-and-so, the grandson of so-and-so? Do you feel like you live in their shadow? Have you felt a certain kind of demand on you? And the funny thing is, when I really think of the area of some shadow that's been over my life, perhaps, or an area of wounding in terms of my own ministry, it's really been the fact that I myself, independent of expectations or what other people thought, I myself often projected ideas of what I thought should happen. And when those things didn't happen, it was profoundly frustrating to me. Now, again, there's part of me that thinks, well, just man up, Dave. I know that's a sexist thing to say, man up, but just, have courage and don't be a whiner, and stay calm, as the British would say, stay calm and keep going. But when I think about God's compassion and think about what my dad was sharing this week, I think, that's probably not God's attitude towards me in that. More likely, God really comprehends where certain desires I had, dreams, and where those things didn't exactly happen. God is not insensitive. God is not having an attitude of like, well, you were ignorant, you had the wrong motives. God's compassion is so profound. And so I will end the video here, but I just want to encourage you, apply the infinite nature, the infinite attribute of God to his compassion for you, to his sensibility towards you. Allow him to come in and touch you and bring his comfort the way only he can. I believe he really wants to do that in our lives. Be blessed.